Okay, so our next talk, we have Andrea with attacker behavior.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. Hello. Thank you for having me today with this presentation. I'm officially the third French accent. Please bear with us. So yeah, today, the first impression that you might have with this title is that it's very niche, right? But I promise that we will be able to do some generalization about attackers' behavior and maybe their sophistication level throughout this presentation. So what the idea of this talk comes from is that in the media and for non-expert, the hackers, the malicious hackers would, this is how they would imagine their screen and their skills with computer in general and with code and everything. So I had this question, is this true? What people think of malicious hacker, are they really good with code line and command line and everything? Or are they not as sophisticated as we think? So this is what the analysis will enable us to conclude today. Let me first properly introduce myself. So I'm Andréanne Bergeron. I am from Quebec City, of course, with the accent. I'm the director of research at GoSecure. And I have done all my studies in social science, okay, in criminology. So I have done my PhD in criminology. So I have this social science background behind this cybersecurity research. So you'll see that my research is very tainted by psychology and criminology and the law and everything. So I keep close tie with the university as an affiliated professor at the Université de Montréal, and I'm also present in my community, in the cybersecurity community, as being the co-VP engagement and outreach for NordSec, a conference in Montreal in May, if you're looking for new conferences around Canada. And I'm also a board advisor for the Canadian Cybersecurity Network. So enough of me. In this research and throughout this presentation, we will consider the use of any type of prompt interpreter, such as command prompt, PowerShell, terminal, bash, anything, as a command line interface, so CLI, right? So from now on, I'll use CLI just to make this presentation shorter. And we will compare this type of behavior, like using a command line interface, in opposition by using the GUI, so just clicking your way through what you're trying to do, your actions on a computer. So at a staggering 87% of people, and people being probably non-expert here, believe that malicious hackers possess exceptional computer skills. Right? This is where the idea comes from. Exploring if this is just a perception or the truth is what interests me in this research project. So experts say that it's possible to become a great hacker without coding knowledge, but having coding knowledge makes it a lot easier. But the CLI will provide faster approach to accomplish tasks and even allows more flexible approach to completing complex and repetitive tasks. And also from my experience, understanding how things work and using the CLI to your advantage is at the core of being a hacker, right? And I'm not talking here about malicious hacking, but like a hacker in general. So in my mind, we are also exploring, in fact, if malicious hackers are similar to ethical hackers. This is who I know. Like I work with ethical hackers. I start to understand how they think. So let's explore if it's the same thing for the malicious hackers. So researchers indicate that, because of course I'm a researcher, I have to explore what previous researchers have said, right? Just to make sure we are going in the right direction. So researchers indicate that while there were some common ground between professional hackers and practitioners, so I'm not on malicious hackers already, professional, IT professionals, professional hackers tend to, or professional hackers or ethical hackers, or whatever we call them, tend to use automated and repeated attack as well as creating new tool using the CLI, right? While the practitioner will use multiple tasks to minimize the effort with the aid of existing tools, and this is in this context that they would use a CLI. So, their usage is a bit different here. But now if we compare ethical hacker or professional hacker with malicious hacker, this is what we know from previous research. So ethical hacker believe malicious hacker are lazy, irresponsible, and not very bright. And non-expert, for their part, will say that that malicious hacker have, and I'm not sure that they do the difference between ethical hacker and malicious hacker because they don't know. But they perceive malicious hackers as a master of their art and highly skilled, right? So let's test all that. So how do we study the CLI used by malicious hackers? Well, it's in observing their behavior directly. And how do we do that? Well, in this case, we did by operating high interaction honeypot on the internet. So we place a real Windows server, but it was fronted with our monitoring tool called PyRDP. It was a research honeypot, so the only objective of this honeypot was to observe hackers' behavior. So obviously, we did not hide it behind a VPN. We wanted to be attacked. We wanted to observe their behavior. So we exposed it on the internet. And PyRDP, more precisely, does a lot of things, our monitoring tool. It does a lot of things. I will not go through all that. If you're interested, you can just Google it. We talked about it plenty of time in the past, and it's an open source tool, so you can all use it. But the thing that I want you to remember from PyRDP is that it gives me two types of data for research purposes. It gives me data before compromission, so all the attempt logging to our system. I have all the information related to that. And it also gives me information after compromission, so once they are in our computer, in our system. And this gives us a lot of information. So in 4 years, we capture 190 million events, so in other words, log lines. And this includes more than 20 million attempts login and 2.3 thousand RDP capture in video output, okay? Because our tool is very cool for that. It gives us video output. I'll come back in a second. But I just want to show you how it ends up for what we are analyzing exactly today. So from the log line, the million log lines, we have successful logins. So we will concentrate only on successful logins. But there's also like replay files that are created from successful login. And because we have honeypot with TLS and NLA, in TLS, like the handshake is made before, so it creates a replay file, but it's useless because nothing happened and there was not a real connection. So I'll skip the detail for that. But in the end, there were, and sometimes they just connect to the server and disconnect for some reason. So maybe a bot was just scanning or something. So in the end, I have 454 session with content, okay, with something to analyze because I was interested in analyzing something. So this is what we will talk about, this is what we analyzed, right? So I come back to the video content, okay? It's truly a video content that we analyzed here. So when the video will start, you'll see the screen of the attacker in action right there. You'll see the mouse movement with the little yellow dot. You'll see that our tool provides everything that goes through the clipboard and through the keyboard, so everything that they type. And at the beginning of the session, we also see the creds with which they enter our system. So you see that we make their life easy with administrator admin as credentials. So first you see in the clipboard, there's our IP address, which probably is how they found us. Then you see when they type on the screen, we see it at the bottom, and this is very useful when they type something that we don't see on the screen, like changing a password. And what is interesting with this session is that they kind of connect their C drive with our session, which allow us obviously to grab everything that is on there. And then they proceed with their activities, which is crypto mining in this case. Okay, they are not doing all the same activities, but this is what they do here. So, reminder, 454 session with content. So session would be like one of the video that you just saw, which represent more than 100 hours of video footage. And all the video happened between January 2021 to June 2023. So, the result. The first observation, that I have a lot of results for you today, but the first observation we made is that how many of them would use the CLI versus the GUI? And you see that the white one used the CLI, so it represents only 8%. So we already got our conclusion to our question at first, so they don't use CLI that much. But then, I will not stop here, right? Because it's not enough for me just to know this information. So the first question that comes to mind is that how is this group different from this group, right? How can we describe better the first group? Because this is the one I'm interested in. So there's different action done by the attackers in our system once they're in, right? They add user, they change the system password, they check for user information, check the CPU of the system, check our IP address, test our internet speed, turns out with Windows Defender, turns off Windows Defender, erase file, usually files that were not there first but that they put and then erase files, so they erase their traces. Download browser, paste files. You know, there's plenty other, but let's just look at those ones. So in blue, you have the CLI user, and in red, you have the GUI user. So you kind of see what type of activity the CLI user are doing the most in the sessions. However, this graph is totally biased because I just show you what the activities of CLI user are doing in the session, right? So because this is what interests me. So just keep in mind that there's other activities that they do not perform, but those are the ones who perform. And as a researcher, I am obsessed with statistics. So this is cute, but the significant relationship between the variable would be only the one that I circled here, okay? So CLI user tend to add user, change password, check CPU, checks IP info, erase file, download browser, paste file, more than GUI user would do. So yeah, I just want to make that clear. So there's two trends that appear here at first, is that they do reconnaissance activities like changing CPU, change IP information. And we also learned that there's evidence of them getting comfortable in our system because they seem to spend a little more time than the other because, well, they add user, they change password, they paste file. So they're here for a long time, right? I said that it was statistically significant, but if I geek out a bit on the statistic, and I swear that it's my only slide on statistics, okay? But for me, like statistically significant doesn't mean that the relationship between the variable are strong. So I simplified this with this graph. We like visual representation, right? So the strength of the relationship is very low. Okay, I put the maximum possibility and the minimum possibility here, and you see that it's very low. Like it doesn't explain the relationship highly. So the only thing that we can conclude, in fact, from those observations, is that the main activity CLI user would do in our session would be changing the password. So yeah, I just concluded that. So no trend that is convincing enough for me to drag conclusions. Only conclusion is about the activity that we see here, and it's mostly to change the password. The activity done through the CLI would be to change the password. And I asked myself another question, because like based on the observation that I did before, do they type in the CLI? Like, do they actually know the line of code, or are they using pre-written script, right? Because sometimes they just paste the binary and then launch it, and it would count as using the prompt, but they don't necessarily know what it is. And we saw that there is almost 20% of the CLI user who use pre-written script. So they might be a different group of CLI user within the same group, in fact. And what do they do with pre-written script? Here are the answers. So collecting information on the system, generating proxy, and use of API tools. Okay. When analyzing the video, we noticed that some sessions were related to each other. So, and I have a couple of examples. Some sessions seamlessly picked up at the same place. So they started to do some activities and then leave, but then come back and continue the same activity. Other than that, they were like the same IP connecting in the short amount of time 2 times, so it indicates me that they might be related. They changed the credential and then come back again with the same credential, so obviously they knew about this new credential. So all those information allowed us to merge the session together, and we pass from 36 different sessions to 27 different attackers. So we lost a couple, but then the analysis are more precise on the type of attacker than on the type of session. So attacker entered 2.15 total prompts during their session, which is not a lot, and 1.2 unique prompts. So only one, right? Well, almost only one unique actions in the session. 52% of attackers had only one total prompt throughout their session, and among attackers using CLI, 33% use it to only change the password while not performing other actions. So this is what we conclude from the first test, right? They use it mostly to change the password, and they do not use it a lot once they're in there. So then, I wanted to see the sophistication level. The sophistication, we can have a debate on what means sophistication, but here it would be just, are some of them, of this group, better than other? This is what we try to evaluate. And how do we measure sophistication level? Well, I explain our process. So here we will add points for those behavior. Okay? Attacker does more than 10 actions through CLI throughout the session. Because it was really rare, we would consider that like worthing a point. If the attacker does more than 4 unique different actions throughout the session, we would add a point. And then if the attacker used tools or script in a CLI, which is a bit more complicated, we would add a point. We would also subtract points for certain behavior. Some attacker would start something and then was not able to complete their action. They kind of were not able to, didn't know how to, or stopped in the middle. So this is considered a failed action. So I would take off a point. And if the attacker does one of the following basic action, we would take out a point. So add user, change password, user information, IP information. If they do that through the GUI, we would subtract a point just because it's one line of code. Like, we just expect that they would use it with the CLI. But if they don't, we subtract a point. So the most common sophistication score was -1 with a downward after that. And the perfect score of 3 was totally absent. So what we can conclude from that is that they're not really good, in fact. And this result means that malicious hackers who are not doing reconnaissance, but rather getting themselves comfortable with their tools and using them are a bit more sophisticated than those who would perform only reconnaissance. Right? It also means that having a sophistication score is kind of worth it to understand their behavior and their sophistication behavior. So a higher score was associated with using tools and installing tools on the system. So using tools would be associated with more sophisticated. So the general conclusions would be that a low number of attackers use CLI, right? This is what the first observation we made told us. Malicious hackers show a low level of sophistication, second conclusion. And previous research mentioned that CLI use is associated with professional hackers, and it might go into that direction. I am not able to conclude exactly that because I was not comparing with behavior of ethical hackers here. But it points toward that direction because now I know that malicious hackers are not using CLI much. But there's concluding thought that I wanted to talk with you, and maybe we can talk more if you have ideas later. But previous research that we have done have shown that attackers might work in group, okay? And in this group, there's people that might be more sophisticated than other. I heard the term associate in this case. So the associate would just perform what they were asked for, which is maybe launch a script like this. They don't know how it works. They're just paid to launch it and wait. So this is to bear in mind, just to understand that in the same team of attackers, there might be people better than or more skilled than others. It doesn't mean that they do not have the capabilities to use CLI. I have no mean to prove that for sure, because I didn't if you if you avoid putting if you obligate them to use CLI, would they be able to do it? Okay, this is something that I didn't test for. So if they had a choice, maybe they could demonstrate capabilities to do so, and I can be sure. Is typing command more at risk for detection? I don't know. It's a question that maybe you can help understand. So is that something they took into consideration? Like they are scared that typing a command would flag, make an alert. So maybe they are avoiding it for this reason. We don't know. And don't we all use the GUI at some point? Because even if you know how, maybe you're just lazy, and sometimes clicking is just easier. It depends on the amount of code you need to perform your action. So this is all what we should keep in mind in the end. So I would be happy to answer your question if you have some. Yes?
You listed 4 or 5 things that people who use CLI for their common activities. Did you note similar activities with the GUI, or were there different type of actions that they perform first?
I'm not sure. Oh yeah, can you? Please, thank you.
You mentioned there were 4 or 5 activities that were common when a user performed actions during CLI activities. Are there any were they similar activities if they connected via GUI, or were there different 4 or 5 activities that they would perform?
So they will all perform those type of activities. Like those type of activities are really present using CLI or not, but they seems to perform it more. The CLI user seems to perform it more, so statistically. So a bit more in this group, but it's present all over the group, both groups. Thanks. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, I thought this was really great, really interesting.
Thank you.
But I guess I was kind of wondering, so you said, like in your study design, you didn't put a VPC or VPN or protect it, really just put it out there so anyone could access it. I was wondering if you thought, it was possible that might have introduced a selection bias towards less skilled hackers. Like, is it possible that the more sophisticated, more skilled people wouldn't bother unless someone at least put in a bit of effort to try to protect it?
Yes, thank you so much for asking this question because I love caviardage in research and this is my opportunity. So yes, we have to bear in mind that my sample is biased because it's exposed, like our honeypot is exposed, and it might attract attackers that are interested in low-hanging fruit, which can make that they are less skilled than others that would be looking for organization that protects themselves better because maybe they have something to protect, right? So you're on point line with that. Yes.
Was your honeypot only accessible via RDP, or were other protocols open?
Yeah, so I didn't put in faces today on that, but yes, it was purely RDP. So there was no other way to get in, and all the attackers that were able to get in was by brute forcing. RDP, yeah. Yes.
Hi. So you only used, hello? Hi. So you only use Windows as a test platform, right? So you didn't use Linux, like anything that's traditionally GUI. Because if I were to, like, say, use your system, I would probably use like LUser or MGR as well to change the password over, say, something like ipconfig for like, say, command line, just because that is not so much a sophistication as it would be, say, for me, I would think of efficiency, as in how quick can I get the action done. And I think for that aspect, for my own self, right, you know, versus say if you were to go into Linux, you wouldn't install X Windows to hack into it. So yeah. I was wondering if you took that into consideration when you did your stats.
So yeah, we didn't because I couldn't, but this is like one of my concluding thought, like to keep in mind, right? Are they just lazy? Do they just prefer using the GUI for certain actions? So I was not able to determine this, but it's something very important to keep in mind. Yeah. Yes.
Were you detecting any script execution, like probably someone just logged in and executing a script of one by one commands, and they were not typing anything at all? So were you able to detect that, or?
Yes. So I call that a pre-written script. So they paste their binaries of pre-written script. They just run it. They grab, and most of them were to grab information about our system. And then they erase the files and quit. So they would do it for purely reconnaissance activities. But we witnessed that. No. Questions? Okay, thank you so much.